From Caracas, Venezuela, my name is Ray Gomez and this is From the South, the news brief on Telesur English. All this week we'll bring you special coverage from the Caribbean of the situation after the devastation left by hurricanes Irma and Maria. And we start this new edition right now. Two catastrophic Category 5 hurricanes in less than 2 weeks. There is something the Caribbean has never experienced before. First hit was Hurricane Irma, which hit Barbuda on September the 5th. It damaged 95% of buildings and went on to cause devastation on Anguilla, St. Martin, the British and U.S. Virgin Islands, and later the Turks and Caicos, Cuba, and Florida State. 13 days later, Hurricane Maria destroyed much of Dominica and brought floods and chaos to Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, and other parts of the Caribbean. Dominica is making progress with the cleanup, but the task is a mammoth one. The number of dead and missing is still uncertain. It may be more than 70. More roads have now been cleared, but it will take time and huge input of money to rebuild the large parts of the island. Aid has arrived from various CARICOM countries, as well as Venezuela, Cuba, Palestine, and others, along with emergency teams, but more is needed. My colleague Regan Devine is in Dominica, and he has with him the Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit. Regan, hello, please bring us up to date.
Good afternoon, Ray. Thank you so much. Yes, my name is Regan Devine. We are on the Caribbean island of Dominica. It's also called the Nature Island, where just 1 week ago, Hurricane Maria, the monster Hurricane Maria, hit and took with it the normalcy of 69,000 residents. Just behind me is the city, the capital city, Roosevelt. We are standing on the rooftop of the Prime Minister's office. And behind me, you don't see anything because there is nothing to see really. All the lights have gone. Any lights that are here are powered by generators. There is no access to fresh water. It is a state of total devastation. Just to get an update on what has been happening, I have with me Prime Minister of Dominica, Roosevelt Skerrit. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you so much for being with us here on Telesur. Let's just start with an update on the lives lost, the persons missing. Can you give us an update on that?
Well, we have confirmed about 25 dead, and there are about 18 confirmed missing, and about another 17 unconfirmed missing. So you're talking about a significant number of people who would have perished as a result of Hurricane Maria.
Now, we've been seeing since last week, and today, this weekend that's passed, I've been seeing lots of aid coming in. How has that been progressing thus far?
It's picking up. There was a little slow start, and it has to do with the weather. It was not possible for boats to come in. The seas were rough. It was not possible for planes to land because of the climatic conditions. But since then, the seas are calm, the weather is fine. So we're seeing an increased delivery of aid supplies, and over the next several days coming, we will see a greater volume of assistance coming to Dominica.
And we need to repeat this over and over. There is a lot of assistance that is needed here in Dominica. What have you gotten thus far, and what are your current needs?
Well, we've gotten a lot of water and food supplies. This continues to be a major need in terms of drinking water. Food supplies are also critical. You're talking about generators, you're talking about chainsaws to clear debris and to clear some of the logs that are still all about. You're also talking about a lot of supplies for babies and infants. So the need is huge because the entire country has been affected. Agriculture has been impacted. and people's way of lives turned upside down. So there's a huge need presently, and certainly for the next several months.
And one of those needs obviously is electricity. You
Yep.
guys have been without lights for the past week. Is there an estimated time when you expect this to be resolved?
We are hoping to have electricity back up at the main hospital by tomorrow evening, and also the second hospital in the town of Portsmouth by tomorrow evening as well. And on Wednesday, we're hoping to have some of the essential services, the government buildings, the police, and other essential services connected, and then we will move to domestic dwellings and so forth. So we're making some progress. We're pushing very hard. We have improved telecommunication services. We're extending the coverage. We are now able to make telephone calls and receive telephone calls, because the days previous we could only communicate by WhatsApp or BBM, but now we can make calls out of the country. So we're seeing a gradual improvement in ensuring that we can bring some comfort to the residents and citizens.
We're getting lots of mixed reports outside of Dominica in terms of the percentage of persons that have access to this and that. Can you verify, is there anyone on the island that has access to electricity? Is there a part of the island that has access?
No.
Nothing at
No.
all? 100% without power?
100% without power. Anybody who has some power, it is through generators. So from the domestic company, nobody in this country has any power. It is a complete darkness in the country. No one has power, only through generators, those who do.
What struck me, Mr. Prime Minister, flying into Dominica was the fact that the banana trees are all gone.
Agriculture is 100% gone.
And of course, bananas is one of the main exports.
Bananas is one of the main exports. We were a heavy exporter of agricultural produce to many islands in the Caribbean, plus the United Kingdom. Agriculture now is at zero, completely at zero.
Now, a lot of aid is coming in, as we said before. I know your office has been taking control over how the aid is being distributed. How far into the island have you gotten? Who is left to receive?
I think for now we have touched every community. The challenge there is that we have not been able to deliver enough, but every community now has been touched. And some supplies, water and some dry goods. Now that we have improved vehicular access to these communities, and we have really launched an offensive on creating access to the communities, because what we did before the hurricane is that we deployed heavy equipment to strategic locations across the country. So these equipments were already there, so it's a matter of just getting on them and starting the clearing. And that has worked. That has worked remarkably, to the point now you can come from the city of Roosevelt and go to most parts of the country now by vehicular traffic. So we intend to use that opportunity to transport more supplies to the communities, because before that we were only relying heavily on helicopters, and these were very limited. We have seen an increase in that, and also some smaller boats. But if we can continue to use the helicopters, continue to use the boats, and now with our ability to transport supplies by way of trucks and vans, then certainly we'll be able to supply more to the communities in the next few days.
I'm glad you touched on transport. There was everyone has been saying that there's been a limited access to gas. Has that been improving?
We have pretty good quantities on island. You will have situations where the workers at those establishments, they were affected also. So it took people some days to get off the shock, the initial shock of the hurricane. People are now getting back, so there are more staff and the management to deal with the issue. The other thing is that there's been a rush on the gas station, so we have to control this.
Okay.
Because our primary objective is to ensure that the essential services have supply, and then we could deal with private vehicle owners. So we are rationalizing this, and tomorrow at the press briefing at 10 a.m. I'm bringing in the proprietors, managers of the various petroleum installations in the country to indicate to the country how much we have in terms of storage and how we're going to go about distributing this to the country. So we do have a significant amount of petroleum products on island. It's important for the citizens to understand we have to do things orderly, and in these circumstances, those who are bringing assistance to you, those who have responsibility of coordinating these events, would need to be given priority. So the hospital needs to be given priority, the airports priority, the police priority, the fire and ambulance priority, all of the volunteers priority, the heavy equipment that are cleaning the roads and clearing the roads, the telecommunication companies, the banks, so these are the institutions which we are given priority insofar as the petroleum products we have on island, and then we will treat with private vehicle owners. So tomorrow we'll get a more detailed briefing and update on where we are insofar as petroleum products.
You spoke of order just a couple of seconds ago, and I know this must be one of the greatest challenges for your government at this point in time. Persons scared and with a sense of hopelessness, needing their immediate basic needs met. How are you guys grappling with the situation at this point in time?
I think we have, to a large extent, brought the situation under control. You'll have heard from the police high command today. There were some incidents of looting, and we have been able to bring this under control. There have been some reported in all districts. But insofar as and of course we had a prison breakout last night, and that was contained by the quick action of the police. 2 of the 4 people who escaped have been apprehended, and I'm sure we'll get the casualty orders very soon. So, and of course we have been reinforced with police and military support from the neighboring islands, the regional security system, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, the government of Barbados have deployed personnel. So we have an increase, and of course we're getting some from Jamaica by Wednesday or so. So we have a reinforcement of police officers and defense forces from other islands to augment the local enlistment.
All right.
I mean, in this circumstance, like everywhere in the world,
of course,
the natural inclination of human beings, is to go and look for things, and sometimes, unfortunately, they loot things they do not need. What is somebody doing on a television set now?
Well, your government has installed a curfew that will be on from 4 p.m. till 8 a.m. Behind us, we still can hear some happenings. People are constructing, moving about, trying to get their homes built, and that doesn't end at the crack of dawn or dusk. How long do you expect this curfew to be going on?
I will wait to be advised by the police. The chief of police will advise me on the state of the security of the state and how long we should go with the curfew. So he will advise me, and then I will advise His Excellency the President on this. I'm really hoping that we can get rid of it the soonest, because we really want people to be engaged, but at the same time, we have a responsibility as a government to protect the citizens from any possibilities. And because we do not have electricity in the country, that places an added challenge to the abilities of the police to provide coverage for the country. So as we go along bringing in electricity, we will look at it and we'll make a determination as to when to lift the curfew. So personally, I hope we can remove it as soon as possible.
Just yesterday, I spoke with a lady in her 80s at a church in Marigot. She was saying about how she was home all alone, and the rain started falling, the wind was blowing ridiculously loudly. She had no idea what to do. She was caught in knee-deep water. She was crying her eyes out and had no idea whether or not she was going to survive the ordeal. In terms of construction, in terms of what has happened to 100% of this island, I know this is a very tough question for you, but what are the steps that your government will take in terms of reconstruction, and how long do you anticipate all of this to take?
Yeah, well, we have construction codes. Sometimes architects and builders and contractors and homeowners take a shortcut because to adhere to the construction codes, it could cost you a little bit more.
Right.
So people take shortcuts. The other thing is that people go online and they see some beautiful looking home and they buy the plan online. But these homes were not designed for the hurricane area. It was designed for some other place, you know, and they build these homes. So I think we need to ensure that people can adhere to the construction codes. Many of some of the homes we lost the roofs. It is not that they were not constructed properly, but a roof has a lifespan, and some of the roofs have gone beyond their lifespan, so they were weak in terms of the infrastructure. But in terms of the design of the roof, we believe that it met the standards. But we will certainly be enforcing this. We'll be looking at certain additional measures in legislation and other regulations to ensure that our citizens build to deal with hurricanes in the future. But the fact is also, with a 170 mile per hour wind,
there's not much that can be done.
You know,
we saw brick walls completely smashed in.
So you have this challenge where the hurricanes are much stronger now, and they're going beyond Category 5.
Exactly. So
you have this challenge as to, and I think architects and engineers may have to review some of the building codes to see whether they're up to scratch, because we have only been constructing and the codes have been designed to treat with Category 5 hurricanes. But now they're beyond Category 5. Yes. What do you do?
Speaking of beyond Category 5, the world has been engaged in this conversation on climate change and the effects of fossil fuels, the use of them. Yeah. Of course, the United States is undecided or has just not decided to support the Paris Agreement. Do you have thoughts on this? Do you have thoughts on the impact that the climate and the use of fossil fuels by countries like the United States has had on islands like Dominica?
Well, you know, when I addressed the United Nations a couple of days ago, I made a very clear position on issues related to climate change. The fact is, we are on the front line of the effects of climate change. We are the least polluters of the world. Our greenhouse gas emission is so low that there's no way it can move the needle, you know. But we are the major sufferers of the effects of climate change. And I believe that the Paris Accord, though it's limited in some instances, but I believe it set the foundation for us to really and seriously look at the issue of climate change and to help nations like ours. Because in a matter of hours, all what you have invested in this country has been blown away by the wind, you know, and excessive mudslides and so forth. So the world really has to look at the suffering of our countries. I mean, we are a poor, vulnerable country, working hard to survive, developing country. We invest heavily in our education, we invest heavily in our infrastructure. We struggle to survive, and here comes these disasters and literally set your country back many years. So what we're saying, and we're not in confrontation here in the country. We're talking about the lives and the livelihoods of human beings, of countries. So when we speak, we're not engaging anybody in confrontation. We're talking about a practical situation confronting our people and the survival. Thousands of us, you know, the sky is our roof now, you know. Many of us do not know where we'll be sleeping tonight, you know. Many of us do not know what tomorrow will bring, all because of matters relating to climate change.
Yeah. Have you gotten any feedback from members of the United Nations after your speech?
Oh yes. We believe, and I want to thank the international media, yourselves, Taylor Sue, for extending the coverage of the speech to far and wide. There were a number of people, a number of countries who reached out to us immediately after the speech, and we are seeing now the deployment of additional aid to Dominica. We're getting more telephone calls, more inquiries as to how we can help. We're prepared to help. The commitments have been made by certain countries, developed countries. So I think, I mean, if a country who has the means of helping us does not help us, right. How do you define this? And this, you know, a country has been brought to its knees, people are suffering, we have the means, we should be able to help.
Mr. Prime Minister, I want to thank you so much for your time. We've seen your work on the ground. I want to thank you. I'm sure your citizens here would appreciate, they are appreciating exactly what you're doing here. Final question before we have to go back to studio. You shared a very emotional interview last week on Telesur. How are you and your family doing?
We're fine. I mean, the thousands of people who have it much more difficult than myself. I am the least of the apostles, you know. My preoccupation are those who do not have a roof on their heads and who need water, you know, whose lives have been turned upside down, whose homes have been destroyed and no insurance, and not knowing how they're going to get a home rebuilt. Children who have to get into school, children who have to do exams, people with health conditions and they can't go to the hospital because we do not have any electricity there. These are my preoccupations. You know, I can survive in difficult circumstances, and I am, you know, but my preoccupation is to people, and I have quadrupled my commitment to the citizens of this country. That I will do, and we will do everything possible to restore their lives and livelihoods as soonest.
Prime Minister Roosevelt, Skerrit, thank you so much, sir.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you.
That's it for us right now. Live from Dominica. Ray, back to you in studio.
Thank you very much, Reagan. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Okay, we have seen 25 dead, said the Prime Minister. The need is huge, 100% of power, out of power, said the Prime Minister. Complete darkness, no agriculture at present. Total devastation. Evacuations are continuing in Puerto Rico as local authorities continue to warn about the risk of collapse of a dam, unlike Oaxaca in the northeast of the island. The passing of Hurricane Maria over the island left structural damage to the dam. Engineers say it could crumble because of the cracks. Around 70,000 people from Isabela and Quebradillas have been told to leave the area. Our correspondent Eduardo Martinez joins us live from Puerto Rico with more. Eduardo.
¿Qué tal, Rey? Un gusto saludarte. Pues la situación en Puerto Rico, cuando han pasado 5 días de la llegada del huracán María, continúa siendo complicada. Desafortunadamente, en este país todavía no ha podido ser, digamos, ha regresado la energía eléctrica, las personas no tienen acceso a combustibles y cada vez se nota más la ausencia de algunas situaciones como alimentos y otro tipo de insumos necesarios para la vida cotidiana. En este caso también podemos decirte que hay cerca de 11,000 personas que están refugiadas debido a la pérdida de sus hogares, además de que todavía hay hasta este momento 10 personas que han perdido la vida, sin embargo...
Okay, Eduardo, thank you very much. As I said, after Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico, the island's government has recognized the rebuilding, which will take months, and asked its citizens to be patient. On the streets, the devastation is obvious. That's what he meant, our team on the ground. There's the story. Now, meanwhile,
Antigua and Barbuda, one of the Caribbean nations affected by...
Yes, Antigua and Barbuda was the first country in the Caribbean to be struck by Hurricane Irma 3 weeks ago. The island of Barbuda was 95% destroyed and had to be completely evacuated. Our correspondent Rolando Segura is in the capital of Antigua, St. John's.
Welcome from Antigua and Barbuda, one of the Caribbean nations affected by recent hurricanes. We're on the island of Antigua, but the most devastated one has been precisely Barbuda, which has limited access. It can only be reached by water. We have to remember that over 90% of structures and roads on that island have been totally destroyed. In fact, the more of 1,600 inhabitants have been evacuated, something that hasn't happened in the last 300 years. But this time, the situation is one of complete devastation. There's standing water, increasing the danger of mosquitoes. There are also dead animals that are breached, so at the moment, this island of Barbuda is a danger zone. The inhabitants are returning in a controlled, limited way by sea to be able to recover their belongings. So the priority of the authorities is to clean up the islands, but the government doesn't have the technical capacity for that, and only then they will be able to think about rebuilding the area and organizing the return of its inhabitants.
Técnica para luego pensar en cómo reconstruir esa zona y organizar el posible regreso de sus habitantes.
Thank you, Rolando. And we're back to Puerto Rico with Eduardo Martinez. Eduardo, say again.
Hello, Ray. It's a pleasure greeting you. The situation of the Puerto Rican is getting far more complicated. It's a lack of fuel, water, and electricity. So far, the authorities say that it is very difficult to rebuild the island after the Hurricane Maria. They are expecting the assistance from the federal government for the reconstruction. We still have 11,000 people in the refugees because their homes have been destroyed or very much damaged. The international airport is not working properly. Many people cannot leave, and then the airport is collapsed. Many people are sleeping there, waiting for a flight to leave the island. We've been working daily to show the situation the citizens are confronting right now, and this is the report for you.
Less than an hour, this house located in the Cataño area was reduced to debris. Its owner, Juan Romero, said he was lucky to remain alive and he hopes to live enough to see his house back up again.
There's no other remedy, and the suffering from that weight. Because nights are long and the heat also. There's no power, there's no water. We have to bathe with water buckets. We're eating what comes up. We're surviving.
The population of this community by the sea realized there's a before and after Hurricane Maria hit the Puerto Rican territory.
Where I live, all the windows exploded. I live on the 4th floor. And all of the windows are gone. The glass, the crystals, everything exploded.
In the metropolitan area, a great amount of gas stations remain closed. The workers don't know when the service will be provided again.
I don't have the time. I'm on a waiting list. The damages are too many. Most of the other gas stations are the same as mine, and keeping the faith of the help to come soon because people are desperate.
On the other hand, the government admits the rebuilding will be slow. Just the electric infrastructure could take months to be restored. At the same time, the over 11,000 refugees could take to leave the shelters.
We hope to start an eviction plan to identify which are the people who can go back to their homes and the people who have to go to other temporary refuges, or who can rent some place if their home was completely destroyed.
In the upcoming days, President of the United States Donald Trump will visit the country, where the aid sent from the Federal Office of Emergency starts to arrive, also the teams who will be tasked with the reconstruction labors.
Ray, nosotros continuaremos dando
Ray
seguimiento a la
will
situación que se
continue
enfrenta
follow
día a
up
día
the
en este
situation
país, donde
in
todavía
Puerto Rico.
en la capital San Juan hay algunas
In San
deficiencias
Juan,
de servicios básicos,
there's
pero
still
la
lack
situación
some
empeora si vamos
basic
a recorrer
services,
el
but
interior
the
de la
situation
isla,
is
la
far
llamada
worse
Isla del
in
Encanto. Por supuesto,
the
les
internal
llevaremos
part
todas las
of
informaciones
the
a
island.
través de nuestra
And we
pantalla de
continue
Telesur.
updating you through Telesur.
We've come to the end of this special coverage. These and many other news, you can find them on telesurtv.net/English. That's our website. Join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Ray Gomez. Bye-bye.